Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Full Tank Motorcycle Podcast with me, Rob, from the YouTube channel Moto Bob, and as always, I'm joined by Tim. You all right, mate?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Not too bad. I'm just recovering still from the glory that was ABR Festival. The last episode of the podcast that just went out, we shot in a field at ABR. Very good fun, wasn't it?
Really good fun. Yeah. I was going to say you're recovering from it because it took me a little time. Actually, significantly less time than the last time we went to the ABR Festival. But yeah, it was a really fun event. It's nice that it's grown as well, that it's developed even still further, because last year it was big, but it seems to have expanded quite a lot in the space of a year.
Yeah, it's a fantastic event. You know what? I was thinking next year, I really want to just go back, try and block out the whole weekend and just borrow as many adventure bikes as possible and take them off-road and just build up a bit of like back-to-back experience of comparing. It's so rare that you get to do that, especially off-road. You might get a day at an adventure center with Yamaha or Honda, but I really feel like you could also make a lot of content about those bikes. The only thing that I was thinking is it was a little bit wet last year, which would have made it less fun, and it was bone dry this year, which makes it more fun, I think, on big adventure bikes, especially on that grassy stuff. And so maybe that has biased me a little bit towards it being great for riding.
Yeah, it was. I'd imagine if it was in the wet that it's going to be a little sort of sketchy depending on your setup. And to be fair, full credit to everyone bringing their own bikes. Because I suppose on this event, actually, to be fair, if you wanted to go around and just sort of take it gingerly and not drop your bike, which I guess is the main aim, then it was pretty easy. We were pretty lucky as far as weather goes. But I think last year it was a little bit sort of spitty, so there was a bit more jeopardy to it. And it might have been more exciting to watch, to be honest.
It's funny, right? You say in reviews sometimes, like, if you're reviewing a R1300 GS, and the press bikes that I get have all the accessories, so they're like £22,000 or whatever. And quite often I'm like, well, who's realistically going to buy one of these and take it off road, because it'd be a shame to damage it? I think the thing you realize after going to ABR, like you say, fair play to a lot of people, because there are people out there who will happily just buy a top spec adventure bike and then take it and just constantly bin it for 3 solid days.
Yeah, it's brave. It's really impressive. I mean, I saw at least 2 people, although they were on slightly older bikes, and then there's a Grom as well, which we both watched try and get up the steepest hill and then just keel over, which was impressive. No one was hurt, but it was, funny to watch.
Fair to say, after observing that the Grom won't be my weapon of choice next year. But one good candidate could be the Ténéré 700. We actually got to borrow a couple of Ténéré 700 Extremes, so the more tall version of it with the slightly upgraded suspension. And it was actually your first time, I'm going to say, ever riding a Ténéré. Is that true, or is that just off-road?
No, not technically true. I mean, I have ridden it, but literally around the corner. So yeah, we've got one for Urban Rider. I say we've got one. Andy's T7 we've used for shoots and stuff. So I'm familiar with the sort of dimensions of it. I've taken it out a few times just to shoot with, but it's just on the road. So that is the first time I've had any extended interaction with it, and definitely the first time I've taken it off-road. And it is the most extreme version of it. So it's the best in a way. I mean, you can tell me whether it's the best Ténéré, but it was a good one to pick.
Well, I mean, I'm interested to get your thoughts, because I think the general perception is that if you want to buy an adventure bike, a middleweight for off-roading, you know, the Ténéré is pretty much the default recommendation. Maybe something like the Touareg 660 as well from Aprilia, because they're not too big and they're not too heavy and they're not massively overpowered. So how did it feel for you out on the trails?
Do you know, the first impression actually was that I was really pleasantly surprised with the fact that I was not dangling toes off the side of it, because it is the taller version as well, or it's the tallest Ténéré you can get. And I was expecting to struggle with the height of it, but actually
910, mate, 910 millimeters the seat height.
Either I've grown, or it's not that intimidating, or there's some sort of wizardry they're doing with the proportions of it. I think probably quite a narrow seat helps. But yeah, nice when we sort of first set off. And it did impress, actually. So it was a good choice for the day, I would say, because obviously I don't do it a lot. Neither of us really do a lot of off-roading, just whenever the opportunity comes up. And if anyone ever sort of dangles keys at you and says, do you want to go and do a fire trail or something, then neither of us are going to turn that down. I think that's the one guarantee where if someone's like, go and take it off-road, we'll definitely jump at the chance. So it was, it was a really fun bike to take off-road. But I do think, because obviously I owned an Africa Twin, I took that off-road once or twice, but only lightly, and we did the Honda Adventure Experience. They are quite different, actually. I'm surprised with how different they are, and I'm also surprised with which one I think I'd choose, and that is the Africa Twin, still, out of the Ténéré or the Africa Twin.
What's the differences then? What made you feel like they're so different to ride off-road? Because in some ways, on paper, they're kind of similar, very off-road biased chassis. You've got a parallel twin in both bikes, a 270 crank. They're not night and day.
No, there's similarities there. I mean, technically it's bigger, but I wouldn't have necessarily said the Africa Twin feels faster. It might actually feel slower because it's heavier, or at least mine did, because it was the smaller one. Obviously, they've raised the size on that since. But one of the first things is there was no creaking or slapping of plastic, which you had with mine. If you took mine off-road, there was a lot of background noise, let's say, because there's a lot of plastic panels that just sort of, if you're sort of shaking the thing around, it does sound a little shaky, and you sort of feel like you're doing a nasty to it, but actually the bike's absolutely fine, and nothing falls off it. It's not like you're going to rattle anything free. But the Ténéré is stripped back, so that's kind of unsurprising because it's supposed to be, right? It hasn't really got any fancy kind of rider tech. It doesn't have cruise control, which the Africa Twin does now and stuff like that. So they have really made that kind of simple. And in some ways, that's a shame if you're going to go and take a distance. But if you're going to go and take it off-road, what do you want really? You just want a bike that is well engineered over sort of generations and iterations of like millimeter precision of this is how the frame should be and whatever else that sort of Yamaha have cumulatively acquired over the years. And you want it to be simple because you don't want to be messing around with settings. If anything, actually, the one thing that was frustrating is that every time you turn it off, you have to go back in to turn off the ABS and change the settings because it will reset. Yeah. And over the course of a day where you're stop-start, that does get a little bit irritating. Basically, you just want a big button that goes off. Like, this is off-road, this is on-road. I understand why they do it, but yeah, as simple as you can get away with, and it is pretty much as simple legally as they're allowed to get away with, whilst still being able to take it on the road. So there's a few things there.
What was the thing though that made you say you would still choose an Africa Twin? Because on paper the Ténéré is a little bit lighter, a little bit slimmer. I'd agree as well, even though it's 9-10 mil in the seat, like rally seat is very narrow, it sags a little bit, so I didn't find it that difficult to get on with. It's also very simple, like you say, from a tech perspective, which I think a lot of people prefer off-road. But after riding both, you're saying you still feel like you would go for an Africa Twin.
Do you know what it is? It's because I don't do a lot of off-road, and the Honda is less aggressive. It's more cushy and more forgiving. So if you've never done off-road before, and when we did the Honda Adventure Experience, I'd not really done anything serious off-road. So I was looking at that and being like, this is a big bike, this could go wrong today. And the bike was so inviting that if you're not a really skilled off-roader, and you can handle the weight. I will caveat that by saying it is a heavy bike, so you do need to be confident enough to know that it's not going to scare you with the fact, oh god, it's going to go down and I have to lift it, which obviously is always concerning because they're not light bikes. But as long as you're not intimidated by that, the Honda will really sort of take you by the hand and sort of guide you through. It's cushy, it's forgiving, it's softer on the throttle as well. Whereas the Ténéré, if you're a skilled off-roader, it's the clear choice. Because it is lighter, it's more capable. If you get that upgraded suspension as well, then it really can perform. So it will ride very well, and it's not a scary bike, but I just think that the Honda is a little bit softer, like I say, just a bit easier.
I think one thing I really like about the Africa Twin as well is you have that extra capacity, and it really just feels like it can chug without stalling, really low in the revs. And also, if you look at the chassis as well, and like how the engine is sort of slung in the chassis, it's really low and canted forward. And I do feel like the Africa Twin feels a little like the center of gravity is lower, although that probably wasn't helped by being on the extreme version, which is
exactly. That's what I thought as well. Yeah, the weight feels a bit lower, so it sort of feels a bit more like it's gyroscopically balanced. Like it's literally you just sit there and let the bike do its thing. And even more so if you get the DCT. So if you just like bike, do your thing, and I'm just going to sit here and enjoy the view, and it's great. But yeah, I loved it. And on some of the stuff, actually, on that really steep hill, I would prefer to have been on the Ténéré, definitely, than the Africa Twin. But either way, it's great. And it just shows that you have to go and test them. And I think that's the thing where you were saying earlier, this is the perfect kind of event where, yes, you have to wake up really, really early to get your name on that list. But you can go and ride bikes back to back. and you will never get that same opportunity. Even if you went and did the different experience days, you're going to have a week or a month in between it. So you're going to maybe forget and reset. Whereas on this one, you can go nearly back to back and really, really compare. And you will find that you gravitate more towards one than the other. And that makes me want to try things like the GS, which I've never tried off-road, and other competitors as well.
I think the real advantage there is, let's say you went and borrowed a demo bike from a dealership as well, something like Fowler's in Bristol, where they have a lot of different brands. They're not really going to be that happy if you bring it back having dropped it off-road or whatever. There are trails nearish by, but that's probably not what you want to be doing. Whereas at ABR, the teams that are running a lot of the demo rides are from the Adventure Experiences, and the fleet of bikes we were riding, for example, was from Yamaha's Adventure Experience in Wales, and that means that these bikes are being prepped for off-roading, so they've got a lot of protection on them, they've got the right tyres on them, they've removed a couple of things like the mirrors and stuff like that, and so the expectation is for you to take them off-road and give them a bit of a hiding, and those bikes are built as a fleet to handle a good season of Adventure Experience damage and wear and tear. So it's a brilliant thing to be able to just go and back to back them. I think for me, I probably feel a bit like you. I think if I was riding something quite tricky off-road, I'd pick the Ténéré just for the kind of lightness and simplicity and that sort of thing. If I was doing more on-off riding and a little bit of touring and wanted kind of an all-rounder out of the two, I think it'd have to be the Africa Twin. There is a bit of a price difference, it's worth saying. I think the Africa Twin starts at about 13 or 14 grand, whereas the Ténéré is at about 10. So hypothetically, we're talking like we've got all the money in the world. That would also be a big factor if I was buying one. But thoroughly enjoyed it. There's a full review actually of the Ténéré Extreme that just went up about an hour ago as we're recording. So by the time this podcast has gone out, it'll have been up for a while. But thoroughly recommend checking that out for anyone who's interested in the Ténéré Extreme. You might see a bit of Tim's bum as well in the riding footage because I was riding behind you. So there's another motivation as well.
If you want to see me. Go on then.
Oh, I tell you what, it was slow going when we set off, wasn't it? Because I was trying to vlog the experience and talk about what the bike's like to ride. That is very tricky to jump on a big tall bike like that on a trail you've never been on. I wasn't really sure what the course was going to be like. I was riding at a snail's pace, holding you up and the guy behind me. Halfway through the ride, switched it off, and I had a really good time after that.
You're going steady. It gave me false confidence because I was like, oh, Rob's a bit nervy today. All right, I'll go ahead of you. And then later on, you were on my tail, and I was like, oh, okay, what's this? It was like you just wanted something to change.
Honestly, I was a little bit groggy as well that day, let's say. We had a few pints the night before. Sleeping in the van is never really the same as a good night's rest. And sometimes the words just won't come to you. And I really had to just slow down and really think about what I wanted to say about the bike. So sounds like excuses, mate.
Exactly.
But it definitely helps to focus on one thing at once. Now, we're talking about Africa Twin versus Ténéré 700 there, but there's another potential competitor on the horizon, as reported in Visor Down this week. I think they also had this on MCN as well, and that's the KOVE, or is it KOVE? Not quite sure. Could be KOVE.
I think it's KOVE, actually, yeah.
Oh, is it? 800X Pro, which is actually a Ténéré style bike. If you look at it, it's very similar in proportions. And they were actually showing this off at ABR. I saw their stand. It was on our sort of little walk between the campsite and the main festival area. And I think next year, if I get a chance, I'd love to take one of these out and see what it performs like, because on paper it really does look quite good. It's a very off-road bias spec. I think they have a more road bias version of this 800, but this X Pro is the Ténéré-esque version. It's a 799cc parallel twin that makes 95 horsepower, so that's a good 20 odd horsepower up on the Ténéré 700. Top speed of 130, and it's a very off-road biased chassis, so 21-inch front, 17 at the rear. I think they're tubeless, which is nice to see. Tall KYB suspension, front and rear, so it's got 275mm ground clearance, I believe, which is 30mm more than the standard version. Adjustable seat height between 865 and 875mm, so again in the similar range to the standard Ténéré. And I think it looks like a pretty impressive package. In fact, they say it weighs 185 kilograms. I'm not sure if that's dry or wet. I'd imagine dry weight. So the wet weight would probably be up around the 200 mark or a little more. I don't know. That looks quite tasty, doesn't it?
Yeah, so weirdly enough, it is obviously in conversation at the moment, yeah, because Andy was telling me about this one, actually. So it's, I believe, about 20 kilograms lighter than the Ténéré, somehow, and everyone that was standing around it was kind of like, don't know how they've done that. And I said, is it like a dry weight versus wet weight thing? Are they just fudging the score? But apparently it is lighter, and it will almost certainly be cheaper. So yeah, not a bad option. And I know obviously they've got the KOVE 450 rally as well, which actually I did spot one at the ABR festival. Not on a stand, actually. One of the people had brought it, I think. But yeah, apparently that's really good as well in its class. So they're making waves, yeah.
Interestingly, I think you're right about the weight. So the weight that they've quoted here in this article, I'm not quite sure where that comes from. But on the KOVE Moto South Africa website, it says it's 190 kilograms in running order with a full tank of fuel, 178 without fuel. And so that is quite a bit lighter than the 205 kilogram wet weight of the Ténéré. Yes, it's a good 10, 15 kilograms less, if those are accurate. Gosh, I don't know about all these official weight figures. I'd probably only really comment on that when I had both bikes on scales.
Yeah, literally, you'd need some scales as well, because what are you going to do? Because feel is a very different thing, right? Because it could be holding the weight differently as well. So
sure. Yeah, I know there are some people who review bikes and they'll weigh the bikes as part of that process. Obviously, getting a big weigh-in bay thing is quite expensive, but if you literally get 2 bathroom scales and roll the bike front wheel on one, rear wheel on the other, and then add up the weight from both, is, I've seen people do that. Apparently, that's not a bad techers. Maybe I should get some bathroom scales for that purpose, actually, in the office.
I'd love to see you try it. If you do, please make sure I'm present for when you actually inaugurally try this out.
Well, it'd be a bit of good sort of consumer advice and validation of the official weights, rather. Anyway, it was confirmed at ABR for the UK with a price of £8,499. And so Visor Down compare it to quite a few of the competitions. So £4,000 less than a KTM 890 Adventure, £2,000 less than a Touareg 660, over 1,500 quid less than the base spec Ténéré 700, and even £1,000 less than the Transalp 750 from Honda, which is a lot more road biased. And so if you want an off-road biased adventure bike that's at a really affordable price, then that actually does look pretty good. Although obviously we can't comment on like longevity and like obviously it's a new bike and all the sort of reliability and build quality and stuff. There'll be questions about that until there's a few owners' reviews out there. I will also say it looks like it's a welded-on subframe, not bolt-on, so you might get in trouble if you bend it there. You might have to replace the whole frame, things like that. So I'd love to give it a closer inspection and review to see how it stacks up. But on paper, not bad, and it's sort of in the price range that the Ténéré 700 was in years ago when they launched it, when it looked like a really good value bike. Then it got really popular and the price has crept up to over 10 grand now. And so this maybe is the modern day equivalent of what the Ténéré originally offered when it was first announced.
Yeah, I think so. I think with a lot of the Chinese brands as well, so the CF Moto is another good example where they've come in at a really aggressive price point. It's very impressive, and obviously that tempts in a crowd and an audience. I think when the conversation dies down about reliability from Chinese brands and Chinese bikes, that price will creep up. That is only there at the moment to get people interested. Once they know they can charge more, they will start charging more. And in a weird way, sort of on this one, actually, it does look like it's not just going for we're cheaper, but it's the same. This is going for literally like trump card sort of figures, trying to sort of top trump them on it, where they'll go, yeah, that bike's great, but do you want one that's 20 kilograms lighter or 15 kilograms lighter? You know, so they're actually going for their headline specs as well. It's not just going for, this is an imitation of it, but at least it's cheaper. They're genuinely trying to perform there, and it's impressive, but I would love to see, a few years down the line, I just want to see what these are like to live with.
We'll have to try and seek out the contact for KOVE in the UK, or KOVE rather, and try and get hold of one. But it's definitely on the list now. Anyway, moving swiftly on, another news story that came in just this last week, I think, is a whole bunch of color updates for BMW's 2025 K1600. So I thought we'd have a little rattle through them. I like looking at these color updates, mate, and just getting your thoughts about whether they've gone in the right direction or not. Are you a fan of how this K1600 looks? It's sort of like a Goldwing competitor, I suppose.
Kind of. I mean, yeah, in that field, if you sort of take it in context, yeah, it's not bad. I think without the top box, maybe a little prettier because it's a bit more streamlined. I don't know. The lines just flow a little bit better. But
for sure.
With the top box, it's got like you can lean against that. That is a super comfortable top box.
I mean, as a passenger, you could. As a rider, I'd say that's a brave
Shaquille
move.
O'Neal might be able to, but yeah, most people probably struggle. Yeah.
Anyway, that's the GT version. That's the first one that's up top there without the top box. It sort of purports to be a bit sporty, I guess, with the GT name, or Grand Touring, I guess, anyway.
Yes, yeah.
Inline 6 in this bike, which is still quite impressive, I think, that somebody makes an inline 6 engine. So hats off to BMW
I was trying to
for
think,
that.
was that one of the ones that Fortnite kind of listed as being the Goldilocks zone for like balanced engine, so that it doesn't have to sort of counterbalance and stuff? Was it 6 cylinders, was he saying?
Yeah, the flat 6 in the Goldwing as well is like naturally balanced, I think.
Yeah.
So 6 cylinders are generally super, super smooth, and that's why you've got them in these two Tourers. It's the antithesis of the Harley and Indian approach to touring bikes, which is to just get a bloody massive V-twin, which vibes like crazy, and then rubber mount it and try and smooth it out. Seems like plastering, papering over the cracks a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, these are, amazing touring bikes, and definitely that category of bike, the Goldwing and the modern sort of super tourer. It'd always be my pick if I was doing a proper big ride. But this GT version, new for 2025, gets a new color scheme called Racing Blue Metallic. Now, can you see yourself going racing on this, perhaps?
Yeah, why not? It won't make me any slower.
Yeah, I'm not sure about this kind of combination. I think if I went for a touring bike like this, I'd go for something a bit more, I don't know, touring style, a bit more subdued. But that's my personal taste. I think it's slightly unusual to have a sports bike paint job on a massive bike like this. That's also available, I think, on the GTL, which is the more touring bias spec with the top box. But they're also available in option 719 Antigua, which is a new color scheme called Blue Ridge Mountain Metallic with a saddle brown seat. Look, mate, we've got to talk about this. What do you think about that brown seat?
Do you know what? With the blue, I think it goes really well. Are you going to say you hate it? What, you don't like it?
I don't know. I'm not a massive fan of that entire paint job. I think it all looks a bit 90s, to be honest. And then the brown seat is just another slightly unusual decision there. So possibly not the one for me, this one, mate.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think in terms of colour, actually, this, I have scanned ahead, but I do think I really like that colour. The blue and the brown goes really well together. Different tastes.
And then the last one is the K1600B, or Grand America. So that's the bagger style, targeted at the US market. This one is called Mineral Grey Metallic Matte. Can I just say as well, actually, one thing that I saw in the press release for this is like there's some updates across the BMW lineup. The 1600 GT, they say one of the changes is that the center stand has become a single factory option. So you can spec a center stand without having to choose it as part of one of their packages that cost like $1,000 or $2,000. On the GTL version, they say the center stand has become part of the comfort package. So you can't buy it on its own. It's now part of a package. And it's like, what is going on with BMW and their kind of, I know they've got a reputation for being very spendy in the accessories catalog, but also these kind of micro changes of just shuffling around what's in a main package for one bike, what's a single factory option on another bike. I just don't know how they can be bothered, but I think it's an indication that BMW have the accessories down to a fine art, and they can make these micro optimizations to get every little last dollar
just milking it. Yeah, no,
100%.
The GS is a great example. How many stock GSs do you see? But if you go in there, everything's an optional extra, right?
Yeah, and the thing is as well, most of the bikes that are available in the dealers come with some of the stuff fitted from the factory. So it's like, oh, we have that bike, but it has got these things fitted already. So, you're not necessarily able to get the stock bike. I think that's probably going to be the case here as well. You probably don't see many K1600s in their most affordable basic spec. Anyway, the K1600B comes in this new color scheme called Mineral Grey Metallic Matte. And you know me, mate. I like a grey vehicle. Our Mini is grey with black. wheels. My van is grey with black wheels. My street twin was grey with black. I was thinking about painting the SV650 as well, like a nicer colour, and I was like, what should I go for? I was like, I know. Dark grey on the tank.
Yeah.
Black on the rest of it.
Yeah, you've got a theme.
What do you think? A bit boring?
It's nice. It's on brand for you. No, it's nice, actually. I mean, I've got a black bike as well, so yeah, I can't really talk. I do, and my Africa Twin was black. What do you know? I mean, there's a reason why it's timeless, because it just goes with anything. So yeah, it's always a good choice. I think you fall between seasons of it. Often you'll find within like a couple of years, brands will either favour black and white, or then they'll go back to sort of more colours and things like that. So they go in and out of style. But no, I think that looks really good. I think if it's a bagger as well, the colour suits the overall theme of that bike. And actually, I think as far as silhouettes, like I mentioned before, that one is really nice. It's just as simple as having that hump to the rear section of it, as opposed to it being flat and sort of chopped off. The fact that it just, the continuity again of the lines is very nice. That is a prettier version of it.
I think it's the one to go for. But still, it's nice they've got the kind of stealthy one. They've got the kind of luxury vibe with the metallic blue and the brown seat. And then they've got the sporty vibe. The only thing I've noticed is they used to have this new painting technique where they'd lay like a decal on and then lacquer over it. And they had this like intergalactic paint job. I wish I had a picture of it. I saw it at Motorcycle Live, I think, in the flesh. I think it was an Option 719 paint job. Anyway, I'll put it on the screen again. But it's a shame they don't have those, but maybe they didn't sell many intergalactic K1600s. It was called Midnight, K1600 Midnight.
It's a statement piece. It's not garish in terms of like bright and loud and shouty, but yeah, probably wouldn't buy it myself.
It's hard to say.
It's mountains,
it's really
isn't
hard
it?
to
It looks
say
like
that
mountains,
one, isn't it?
Actually, like a silhouette of mountains.
I think it's meant to be like a night sky, actually.
Okay.
It looks more like the Milky Way sort of thing when you're up close. Okay. I think it maybe is a response to the sort of very fancy paint jobs that you get on like a Harley or something like that. Something that looks a bit more custom, especially for the bagger version.
Yeah.
There's another picture.
It's
funny.
It's pretty trick. I mean, if you brought it to a bike meet, then it's going to at least get some looks, but I don't think it's the one I'd live with day to day. I think for me, just to be a bit different, I'd actually probably say the Blue Ridge Mountain Blue is my pick.
Would you really?
Yeah, just to be a bit different. I think that I like the silhouette of the bagger, and you can't beat a black bike, but I think on this occasion, just to be a bit different, I'm going to say that blue and brown.
You know what? I remember actually being in Paris once, and I saw a guy riding a BMW RT, a similar colour to that, and he was wearing just an open face helmet with some sunglasses, like a t-shirt, some chinos, no socks, and some little loafers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Commuting around on his Beamer in just everyday clothes. I'm not advocating riding without gear, but I will say it did actually look quite cool, and I thought that's the first time I thought an RT looks kind of fashion. So maybe it can be done. Yeah. You just need to get that outfit and then maybe wear some armour underneath or Kevlar. Anyway, moving swiftly on, we've got Comment of the Week, one of our regular sections. In a recent episode, we talked about The Bike Riders, a new movie, which of course features motorcycles. Tim did a little review for us, so do listen back if you haven't heard his thoughts on it. But we also asked in that episode for people's suggestions for their favourite motorcycle movies. We went through some of the best on IMDb, a lot of which we hadn't seen, Tim.
I think I'd seen what was my score.
Here we have.
I think I've scanned through this one. I'm doing a lot better on the user submitted than IMDb's suggestions. So
let's rattle through some of your comments. There's quite a few here to get through. But again, let me know, Tim, which you've seen, which you haven't, and which you're probably going to go and seek out and watch. So we've got Victor P. Ham, 3437, who said, one movie I like from the 80s that had some bikes in it would have been the movie Tron. Great shout. Can't believe that wasn't on the IMDb list.
Yeah, genuinely, actually. Although I guess electronic bikes, maybe they just don't like the electric bike scene. But in the new one, actually, the reboot, it's not even a reboot, actually, is it? It's a follow-on. It's a sequel. They start off with him on a cool bike. I think it was a Ducati, actually. I want to say it was a Paul Smart, but I could be off on that one. But he was riding that to the arcade to sort of set the scene, and that was, good introduction.
Cool, I like that. A little bit of symmetry on either side of the... Yeah. Fun with AJ comments for Moto movies, Tron and Tron Legacy, which I guess is the sequel that you were just talking about, Biker Boys, The Great Escape, and Mad Max. Was Mad Max not in the IMDb
No, it
list?
wasn't. And that was one of the,
it?
afterwards, I was like, I couldn't think of any bloody bike films. That's a huge shout. And yeah, I have seen that and love it.
The original or like Fury Road?
There are bikes in the other films, but the most bike-oriented is going to be the original, the first one. Just Mad Max.
John Ernst 8717 says Wild Hogs, a must see. Have you seen that or not?
I've seen Wild Hogs, yeah. See, I'm doing great.
It's kind of a comedy.
I like these.
Comedy biker gang.
It is. It's John Travolta. It was okay. I don't know how well it's aged because I haven't seen it in a while, but it was good when I saw it.
So I'm quite a heavy user of Rotten Tomatoes just to kind of pre-check movies.
Yeah.
Wild Hogs has 14%.
Oh my God.
Maybe it's so low that it's good though. I do find that the worst ones are sort of in the middle. If it's like a hammy comedy and it's got a really bad score, it can be quite good because of like just how silly it is. And I don't know if people have reviewed that watching it expecting something that's like an actual cinematic masterpiece, and therefore they've been disappointed. But clues in the poster, isn't it, for that one?
Yeah.
Jimmy McTavish, hello from Australia. Stone should be up there as both a cult classic and an iconic motorcycle film. Have you seen Stone?
No, I haven't, no.
I think maybe an Australian low-budget cult film. And from the looks of the poster on that one, which we'll put on the screen now, that does look pretty awesome. Definitely we should give that one a watch, mate.
Yeah, that'd be a good shout.
PJA7 says for fictional feature films, the original Mad Max and Stone. Lots of Z1 bikes on these two, so another couple of recommendations for those. Alex on a Boat says, in terms of documentary films, I'd throw in any of Austin Vince's films. He's got a very distinctive style, which for some is a bit Marmite, but they document several long-distance motorcycle trips, including twice round the world, long before the Hollywood touch of Long Way. Have you seen any of his Austin Vince documentaries?
No, I'm just looking him up now, actually. So yeah, he's on, is it a dual sport or a little enduro bike? Okay, cool. Good shout.
Is Mondo Enduro one of his big movies, perhaps? Definitely one to check out. That sounds interesting. And I appreciate that's probably a bit niche and more of interest just to bikers. So I like those sorts of recommendations as well as the Hollywood stuff. Listen to this one, Tim, and tell me if you would love to watch this movie or not. Joe K 81918. Wait, is this a joke? The username is Joe K, so this could be a joke. It sounds like a joke. It says the movie Rubber is about a sentient tyre that comes loose from a car and rolls through the entire movie attacking people.
Yeah.
That sounds phenomenal.
I've heard of that. That is a real film. That's not a joke, although they may well have been sort of, joking. They just like some humour. What can I say? I heard of that. Someone told me about that the other day. And I can't say I've checked it out yet, but the premise sounds amazing.
Would you expect this movie to have a higher or lower Rotten Tomatoes score than Wild Hogs?
I'm expecting higher, actually, probably, ironically.
67%, so it's almost 5 times better.
Is that audience submitted, though? That's not critics, that's the audience.
No, it's a blend.
Score.
It's critics.
Okay.
That's critics and audience blended for the total Rotten Tomatoes score. Phenomenal. Anyway, Andrew Wilson Oz recommends again the Australian movie Stone, very much bikie culture in the 70s Australia. Aussie G82, I grew up with Easy Rider. Great film and a must see, especially if you love biking. I have to say I'm staring at bike riders down my nose. Seems to be trying too hard to be cool, which makes it instantly not cool for me personally. Ooh, is that fair? Having seen it, Tim,
I think I said during the sort of the brief sort of review of it. I think something I didn't mention is how sort of documentary style it is. The setup of it is great, and actually, if you go online, you can hear the interviews of people because the guy's going on with a tape recorder. You can hear the genuine people that they're based on, that the character's based on, and at the end, they obviously do that thing where they show the photo of this is the person and this is the actor, and it is quite good. It's quite close, but actually, I'd say it's a hard one to judge. Really, it is subjective, because it's down to your taste whether you think they're really trying too hard or not. But I think Austin Butler does a really good job of what could be a very boring character and could be very try hard, James Dean, I'm trying to be cool. But I think he actually does meet the line well, considering that it genuinely isn't an easy task, as you well know, to be,
to be
quiet,
cool.
to be taciturn and cool and just,
Some of us it comes naturally to, mate, but I do understand the struggle for you, for the likes of you. the likes of yourself. Sorry, bud. I had to say that. Yeah. Anyway, Fat Booster Racing, 2 Australian motorcycle movies, Stone and the original Mad Max. Another couple of votes there. And it's got to be said, in the same way that we always say, France seems to have a high success rate of like cool custom motorcycles, and the custom bike building scene seems to be pretty strong there.
Yeah.
From these responses, it seems like Aussie motorcycle movies are possibly the best. So that's the conclusion that we draw from that section. Anyway, next up we've got Bike of the Week. Oh, I think you're going to like this one, mate. It's called the Janus Gryffin 450. I think it was recently announced. And basically, this to me looks like the sort of essence of what a retro scrambler could and should be. Now, Janus are like a very small volume manufacturer out in the US. It doesn't look like a US made bike. I think you've probably got a stereotype in your mind of what a kind of small US bike builder would make. This is very much that super cool retro scrambler style. And the spec on it looks pretty impressive, mate. So it's a 445, I think, single cylinder engine. 30 horsepower, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it really is quite slim and slender, this bike. They say 150 kilograms, which, again, they don't say if that's dry or wet, but even if it is dry weight, by the time it's full of fluids, it's not going to be massive. 21 inch front, 17 rear, so a bit off-road specky. Looks like it's got some decent handguards, sump guard. And a lot of this stuff is kind of handmade. Like I say, they're low volume, handmade, artisan bikes, if you will. So things like the exhaust system is hand built. The mudguards or fenders for our US audience are kind of hand rolled as well. I mean, look at that. That's a beautiful bike, isn't it?
Yeah, I like it. It looks authentic. I mean, if that was, a bike meet, I honestly wouldn't even have the first clue what that was based on. I'd just assume it was somebody's sort of custom bike. And normally the place to start is look at the engine and figure out what it sort of, at least the base is. But that's quite unique. I like you say, the fact that it's hand built, and it does look it, but in a good way. It just looks like someone who knows how to fabricate metal. I like the exhaust, actually. Everything about it. It does look somewhat functional. I mean, it is a scrambler, so it's not something you can stand up on with comfort, but it is at least something that will go off-road, because it's got not great ground clearance, but we're going to say, that, like you say, that sump guard, that bash plate is pretty robust. The exhaust is kept high. All of the important stuff's kept high. You've got 21-inch front. So, yeah, not bad.
Looks pretty cool, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The engine, like you say, you would be looking at that thinking, what is this custom built upon? They just say it's, in the article on Rider Part, which we'll link to in the description, they say it's SWM sourced. I don't really know about SWM.
No.
Seems to be an Italian motorcycle manufacturer. But yeah, who knows, mate? I guess it's kind of like a dirt bike derived engine or something like that. But the end product is fantastic.
Yeah.
And for something that looks like a bespoke build almost, or looks like a custom build, I think the price is pretty decent. They're open in Buckins, and they start at $13,495, which is a lot. Don't get me wrong, for like a single cylinder 30 horsepower scrambler, but for what you're getting in terms of the visuals and the sort of attention to detail that's gone into it, like you say, things like the exhaust system, the way the headers curve round, pass around each other at the front, and then into these slim silencers, slightly staggered, it all looks pretty fantastic to me. Little trellis swing arm as well, lovely touches. I think it's not that bad, the price, but then maybe I've gone a bit crazy and been exposed to too many Ducati limited editions.
Yeah, it's hard to know. I don't know what that would equate to in terms of pounds, but probably not far off, actually, because you have to get shipped over, I'd imagine, and import sort of stuff on it as well. So who knows? Not cheap.
It's just over the 10 and a half grand without having to have it shipped and all that sort of thing. So you could buy a Ténéré, for example, as we just discussed, at 10,100.
Yeah.
And that probably is a bit more off-road capable, but it doesn't look anywhere near as cool as that, in my opinion. Anyway, a huge thanks for listening today, everybody. If you're listening on audio, of course, head over to the YouTube channel. There was a lot of visual stuff this week, so it does help to watch along with some of the pictures and videos laid over the top. Leave us your comments as well down in the comments section on the YouTube version, and we'll pull out some of our favorites for next week's episode. A massive thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.